Hello, Shasta County, and welcome to another recap. Today, we are going to go over the 10-7 Shasta County Board of Supervisors meeting, the 10-7 Reading City Council meeting, and the 10-8 Shasta County Office of Education meeting. Okay, there's a lot to go over, but what you need to know and what is really important is we need to be paying attention to all three of these meetings, all three of these boards, and we need to be looking for good qualified candidates, or we need to be looking at who's already there, because the 2026 election, there are some big changes that are going to be happening, and these boards all have vacancies or rerunning candidates that need to be looked at. So your Shasta County Board of Supervisors, both District 5 and District 1 are up for election. That is Kevin Cry and Chris Kellstrom. I will tell you, as of right now, running against Kevin Cry is Kurt Swanson, and running against Chris Kellstrom is Tim Garman. And neither one of those will keep this county moving in the direction that it's headed. So I would recommend that you get behind the current supervisors and support them. But, we will get more into that campaigning stuff later and future down the road. For Reading City Council, there will be 3 positions open. That is Tanessa Audette, Mayor Jack Munns, and Aaron Resner's seats. We need at least 2 good candidates to run. I personally feel that Tanessa has been doing a lot to bring things to the public's attention and to expose things that are going on and ask the hard questions. So I think we need 2 good qualified candidates to replace Mayor Jack Munns and Aaron Resner. Again, completely your decision. I want you to do your own research, and we will talk about that more as it gets going. But Shasta County Office of Education, that will have 4 seats available. Robert Brown's seat is open. Arthur Gorman is up for re-election. Teresa Roberts is up for re-election, and Laura is up for re-election. So we need to find at least 2 good candidates for that board because we need to replace Robert and Laura. So please keep that in mind. Be thinking about that. Please start paying attention to these boards and these councils in the next few months so that you can watch and do your own research and decide who is best representing you and who is not doing the job and needs to be replaced. Let's kick off starting with the supervisors meeting from Tuesday the 7th. So that we had Employee of the Month from Public Works. If you guys have not seen Troy Bartlemay get up and speak and see like the softer, funnier side of him, you missed it on Tuesday. Go back and watch that. But he really talked about how great this employee is and how much she's doing other people's jobs. But he also talked about how she's putting in all the extra. But if we continue to ask that of her, she will be gone. And we have great people in the county who are doing their jobs and going far beyond, but we need to be supporting them so that they do not have to exhaust themselves past what their duties should be. So I thought that was a really important part of that, and I'm glad he gave her that recognition. And then it was funny because Corky Harmon tried recruiting her to the Board of Supervisors and was like, sounds like you would make a great supervisor, which everybody there thought was pretty fun and funny. CEO Rickert talked about some laws and legislation that are either new laws or coming into law. AB 418, which has new rules for the county. AB 518, which has some changes to the low impact camping ordinances, SB 72, which has to do with water, and SB 81, which is the Confidentiality of Medical Act. So he addressed those, and we really need to be paying attention to what's going on at our state legislature and going over the bills and looking into who is funding, who is backing, who's for, who's against, and finding out what the meat and potatoes of these bills are, because sometimes things sound one way and then are completely another way. So we need to be really watching and looking at it. And so then we got into board reports. Alan Long talked about the bridge over Whiskey Creek and the strategic planning survey that's coming out. And then he talked about the Harvest of Hope Gala for Good News Rescue Mission. Chris Kellstrom talked about Coffee with Cops in Anderson and the LAFCO meeting in Bernie, story time at the Anderson Library. He went to Supervisor Harmon's town hall, had a Zoom call for the SAC Air Quality Board, the Uniting Cultures event, the Stillwater Powwow, and raw milk and cookie day out at Duvendorf Farms. Supervisor Harmon had a town hall in Palisadro. And he will be hosting those the first Thursday of every month. So put that on your calendar if you are a District 3 voter, or if you want to have some, give your input. It's a time really for him to come and listen to the constituents, get to know him get to know you. He talked about the wolves, but he was going to give time over to Plummer so that Plummer can talk about those more. Supervisor Plummer talked about funding applications for Prop 1 and where that's headed, the wolves that are affecting multiple states, and a group of the counties working together to get it on the federal level register and just have it more eyes on the situation. He said it would be great to have an emergency response care team for when there are people on the street that need help, that we have a process for that. He met with Chief Neal about crime data and wanting to have those up and available for people through the CCP. And then conversations about the tax initiative. He said he would be releasing his own opinion, and he did. He sent out an email on where he stands on that. I thought that it was good, and I, gave him kudos for the fact that he didn't campaign for or against it at the dais. I don't think that that's an appropriate place for them to be doing that on this initiative, because really it's not their jurisdiction. Kevin Cry thanked Chris for taking his air board meeting. He met with Hope Seth regarding the county strategic plan, went to juvenile court. He went to the peer court, and then he was letting people know. A lot of people come to them with concerns about what's happening in juvenile court and family court, and he was just letting them know that they as supervisors have no jurisdiction on the court cases, so they want to do all that they can, but they want to make sure that people are aware of what the jurisdictions are. He went to the Stillwater Powwow, and then is working with staff and TW Shannon and the Fountain Wind Project. They've punted that decision down the road again. So then we moved into public comments, and the consent calendar, but one item was pulled. Corky Harmon had, his was R5. So consent was passed. There was C5 was pulled. And they had some questions about why the cost went up even though we are lowering our liability, and they were able to get those answers, how many youth we've been putting into that program, and just the fact that it is now a 3-year agreement, not just the one. So that was the explanation for that. But consent was approved 5-0. R3 was about the different commissions and committees that are available through the county and what our responsibility is on each. There are 81 boards and commissions and committees. They did vote to bring back the one on aging. There are 2 committees that kind of work alongside each other but differently, and so they want to bring those back and talk about those. And then there's a historical heritage committee and also a remote access committee that Supervisor Plummer wanted back. So those are both back, or both coming back. But then R4 was amended, and there is a 1% cost share and a blind ballot going out to employees. This is regarding the PERS accounts and 1% cost share going out to them. So that is going out, she said, over the next week, and we should have some decisions back. So that one passed 5-0, or we should have some input back from the employees. And then R5 was the Silverbridge subdivision that Corky has. That was started in 2006. It was, put through the planning department in 2010. The project has been back that far. So we're looking at 15, 16 years that this has been going. There have been 0 issues. There have been 0 controversy over this. And the real issue is we are looking at whether we vacate the public easement to that main road because he wants to make it an HOA and have a private gate. And there is a public easement that will not be vacated for the emergency fire lane that comes out the backside of that property. So if you listen to the public, it is just insane that they are trying to criminalize and make something out of nothing. This is something that's been going for a long time. It was way before he had any ambition of running, even before he decided he was going to run. And staff had said this is a decision that, had it been any other project, any other time, it was just kind of a perfect storm of situations that it even ended up on the agenda, that it would have just been stamped and passed through. But it ended up on the agenda, and it passed 4-0 with Corky recusing himself. He was very public about it. He was very transparent about it, and it passed 4-0. Closed session was negotiations, and then there was a case against Shasta County and former sheriff and CEO Eric McGreeny, or assistant CEO Eric McGreeny. And that decision out of closed session was to defend the allegations and hire outside counsel. So that is where we are at on that. And that wraps up the Shasta County Board of Supervisors meeting, which brings us to the City of Reading, which I have somehow managed to, there it is, move my papers. So City of Reading, Reading City Council, at the very beginning of the meeting, they talked about, they had closed session, and they talked about their hiring practices moving forward with finding the replacement. And it sounds like they're going to head in the direction of having Steve Bade be the city manager But I will verify that information and let you guys know. As of right now, that is who is in that position. But at the beginning of the meeting, it was brought up by Councilman, I always want to say Supervisor, Councilman Littell, that you should go back to the September 5th meeting at 4 hours and 6 minutes in and look at Tanessa trying to push for those raises. And she said, yes, please go back and watch, because there is a whole lot more to that narrative than that's being put out there. And the fact is, she made decisions based on information that was provided to her. She made decisions based on what was explained to her. And she did not know at that time who all was going to be getting those raises. She thought she was approving certain ones. So, again, she has taken the time to apologize, take responsibility, and say, I will do better moving forward. I will ask those harder questions. I will get those answers, which is what we're trying to do. So it all really comes back to, in a future meeting, we are going to have Mr. Robinette, who is the Director of Finance, come up and give a presentation that will answer questions and clear up the narrative of what's going on with our finances, or it won't. And that's what I'm leaning toward, is he's going to come up and he's going to present the way he's presented. And we're going to walk away with more questions than we have answers, which should tell you something. So that, again, is my personal opinion on that. But consent calendar passed except for 4.1C was pulled. Mike Littell recused himself because of a campaign donation. He recused himself. He left the room, but didn't explain why. Came back in later and was asked, and he said it was because of campaign donations that were given to his campaign. But it was pulled by both Councilwoman Audette and Councilwoman Resner. Then when they spoke about it, the payment to the general fund is $3.25 million, which they decided to keep in the capital projects fund earmarked. And then once we know what those other fees are going to be moving forward, we have a grant that's coming, but we have a meet that we have to do for that. And so it will come back to council to reappropriate it. But I think that in this discussion, this is another time where we need to have people go and watch the meeting, go and look at what is said and hear it directly from them. When you look at timestamp is 6:32 p.m., Mr. Robinette gets up there and he speaks and he says, this would be revenue that we do not typically go to council to decide what to do. So normally money coming in like this is revenue, and it gets put in and deposited into an account that then just becomes money that is they get to decide and figure out what to do with. And council doesn't always get to make those decisions. And he's said things like this in budget hearings multiple times. And that is where Councilwoman Audette always says, but wait, why don't we get a say? We want to say, make sure you bring that back. And if you look at where all the loopholes are that give them discretionary spending, and then you look at where our gaps are, that's where a lot of our issues seem to stem from, is this discretionary spending that doesn't really have an oversight by the council that is elected by the people. So that's where our main issue is. And we need more people that are going to stand up and ask questions about that and say, wait, did you really just say that revenues like this come in and you would not bring that back to us? Is that really what came out of your mouth? Because they're telling us, it's that whole like informed consent piece where government entities and nonprofits will come out and say, here's what we're going to be doing with this. And you don't object. And so then you've given this informed consent where they've told you what they're going to do with it. You either just didn't believe them, didn't pay attention, or didn't act. And then you've consented because you've given your passive consent by not getting involved. And we need people asking hard questions, getting involved, and holding people's feet to the fire. We are in a budget crisis, no matter if they say that we're not or we are. We are in a budget crisis. We have people like Councilman Littell who are campaigning for Measure A from the dais. Almost every single item that was discussed at this meeting, he found a way to bring it back to the sales tax increase and why there's a need to pass that. If that is not campaigning for a measure, I don't know what is. But why do you feel the need to bring that up and push it so hard if we are not in a budget crisis? Right? They say, oh, we're not in a crisis. So the fact that you say that is misinformation. And the fact that you say that is fear mongering for the public. But then there's such an emphasis on making sure that Measure A pushes and passes, because if it doesn't, we're doomed. That means we're in a budget crisis. That means we need to address where the hemorrhaging is and we need to fix it. So that being said, that then passed. But we also had the property amount for Stillwater will be transferred into the general fund, but earmarked for future projects. They did decide to keep that they did decide they were going to keep that in the capital projects fund until it was ready. But basically there is $550K that is coming from TIF and 2.8 million that would be moving over and would be spending that could be decided on at a later date. So Andrew gave a presentation on the airport projects, and there was a lot of really good information on that and a lot of details about how they're pretty self-sustaining. They don't actually need to take from the city and have the city subsidize. They're pretty self-sustaining. But there is the Benton Air Park that does cost because they do not qualify for some of that federal funding. And so some of that is on the city to work on that cost. And Dr. Januka kind of gave him a hard time and was like, hey, how do we get that to zero? But I think we all kind of realize there's a state match, there's funds being put in, and because our airport itself is so self-sustaining, the cost to Benton is fairly minimal. But there are some things that need to be repaired out there and fixed. I do know that the improvements to Reading Airport have been amazing. The changes, I flew out of the Reading Airport. It was a great experience. And everything about it was extremely positive. Then Councilwoman Audette jumped in because Dr. Januka touched briefly on the moto truck and the auto racing area that's out there at the airport and where we're at with those negotiations. And he really emphasized that those do need to be looked at and what council's intent is with everybody working together on that. And so he left that pretty vague, but he did make that very clear that that is the intent, that everybody needs to be working together. Councilwoman Audette did jump in and add that, you know, it does seem that the moto group and that the cart group are being pushed out. They've had zero access for 9 months. And so we do need to address that. Andrew is supposed to be looking into that. So, and then Dr. Danuka came back on and clarified this is, everybody needs to be working together. So that kind of went back and forth between the two of them, but they were basically saying the same thing. And that needs to be pushed. Very hard to have a resolution. Then the World Triathlon Ironman is set to have an event in August of 2026 in Reading, also one 2027 and 2028. Staff suggests partnering with Choose Reading for lodging and authorizes the city manager to navigate and draft the agreement. This kind of went back and forth for a little bit. Dr. Januka wanted to know what that cost portion would be by the city of Reading and what we would be responsible for before signing it, and wanted to have it come back, but it sounded like it had a sense of urgency for signing the agreement. So the estimated cost was between $250,000 and $500,000. And Dr. Danuka said he was okay with that amount and would approve it. Robinette said that he will provide an off-agenda update of costs to the council members, so they should be getting that hopefully today or this week. And that was past 5:00, so that will be coming. Joint Powers and REU has a partnership that between Bella Vista Water and City of Reading. There are a lot of residents that are within the Reading city limits, but they are on Bella Vista Water, so they are working on that. And then they had an item to consider terminating the financial assistance for the Reading Civic Center. So this came about because Councilwoman Resner said that she was not made aware of the almost $50,000 donation that Advanced Reading gave toward Measure A until right after the vote. And so it looked bad, and she wants to see the city made whole if Measure A passes, so that it doesn't look like they are paying to have something pass where they then get more funding. Because what would happen based on how they have Measure A structured is if it passes, the Civic stands to get a large chunk of money. Well, we're already giving them free rent till January and $675,000. And so she was just saying, if in fact it passed, she would want direction to staff to find out, sit down with them, and come up with some way to make the city whole by repaying that $675 out of what they would get. If Measure A doesn't pass, then they don't repay anything and nothing's lost. We cannot claw back the money because Julie Dyer, who is part of Advanced Reading, got up and she said that the way it was structured, it was set up as reimbursements for what was already spent. And so basically that money is already all spent. And so there would be nothing to claw back at the end of the 30-day agreement. And then staff had said if there was money to be clawed back at the end of the 30-day agreement, by the time you give them the 30-day notice that it will be terminated, they have 30 days to spend the rest of that money. So there won't be money there to take back. So that is where we sit on that. Her whole thing was that it's a silly thing to ask for, but knowing what she knows, she wouldn't have voted the way that she did, or she may not have voted. She said she didn't say she wouldn't have. She may not have voted, knowing and that they didn't fully disclose or weren't transparent. So I don't know. When we move into item 12, Tanessa had asked the monthly cash reports that are going to begin next month. She wanted to know if everybody liked that, wanted that to continue. Nobody really wanted to discuss it. They said once we get it next month, we can make a decision then if we want to continue to get it moving forward. She wanted to know if we would be okay with a resolution in opposition of Prop 50. And Councilwoman Resner said that we need to stay out of it. Jack Munn said he wanted nothing to do with it. Dr. Januka did not respond on which way he wanted to go. And Councilman Littell says that it is a nonpartisan office and he wants to stay out of it. I don't feel that Prop 50 is a issue that needs to be stayed out of it. Directly affects our county, our city, our region. And so I do think that it is a huge thing. And I think that everybody's response on that says a lot. And so take that, do your own research for it. But I will say, when you do your voting, you should already have the voter information guide. I will be encouraging everybody that I know to vote no on 50. So that's where I stand. And then it was also asked, when we get the money from the tribe, would we want it to go toward adding police? The group would then decide what happens with the money. They said that they wanted to wait and save that decision for when the money hits the account, then talk about what we want to do with it and where we want to go with it. She wanted to agendize it to have a conversation now. And then Councilman Littell made a comment that we need to wait on it because the sales tax. And so I just thought that that was just one more moment where it was not really an appropriate moment to be pushing that. And that's where it seems like he's truly pushing an agenda, is she wanted to agendize discussing what happens to these funds and what she does, like what the council as a whole wants to do with these funds. And he wanted to take it to be one more moment to, well, let's wait and see because the sales tax really needs to go through and we needed to decide after that. So, and then Councilwoman Resner brought up, would we like to address whether family members of this council can be appointed to different commissions and committees? And I think that really it was only her and Councilwoman Audette talking on it back and forth. And it was a general understanding that that would be kind of poor form to appoint a family member or a spouse. But staff did say that they are rewriting the nepotism fraternization policy, and that would kind of fall into that for both staff and the council, and so that they can bring that back later as that gets rewritten to be discussed by council. So I think that one's going to come back and find out how that would apply to the board and decisions that they're making for appointments. So that pretty much wraps up the City of Reading meeting, which brings us into our last item, and I will be brief with that. And that is the Shasta County Office of Education Board. So the item, there was a meeting before the meeting for a resolution to propose a merge of Whitmore and Mountain Union Elementary School Districts to be a project exempt from SCOE. And so that proposal for a joint petition to merge Whitmore and Mountain Union Elementary School District was what was being voted on, decided on, talked about, and they voted to today, Friday the 10th, today, Friday the 10th, to have a special meeting at 5:30. So tonight, 5:30, And that then, because they chose to take action on SCOE, Wednesday started a 120-day timeline. They already have a meeting in December where they're going to be holding a county committee meeting. And he said that that would still give them time in January to make changes if needed. But that was a 4-2 vote. Robert Brown voted against it and Laura voted against it. But Robert Brown not only voted against it, he was making side comments to the superintendent and was rolling his eyes and sitting back in his chair like this. It was a very poor display for the board president. You're not in charge of this one meeting. Laura was running this portion of the meeting. And so you're sitting back and pouting, and the behavior was just ridiculous. So it sounded like, based on his body language and what he was saying to Superintendent Freeman, that he wasn't even going to go tonight. So I don't know who will all be in attendance tonight at the meeting, but hopefully they are all there and get this decided so that these districts can move forward. So then it was brought up during public comment that Youth Option Shasta will not be getting a renewal of their $45,000 agreement. So that is frustrating because that was parts of the Community Connectors agreement that the county fed funds into with the County Office of Education. So for that to be cut without really having those conversations seems, I don't know. I hope it gets brought back and readdressed, because this has peer court. This has Mr. Rick, who comes onto campuses and meets with students, and his work and what he does through them is amazing. Youth Option Shasta has had some bad press and some kind of interesting turbulence to navigate, because Susan Wilson, who was on the board, had admittedly taken money from that organization, and the district attorney has still not filed charges on that. So that kind of hangs over their head, but it does not have anything to do with what is being offered and the services that are provided and the results that are coming through on that. So I really do hope that that is readdressed, and that agreement is renewed, or even that they expand that agreement, because I think that it is a good program that does good things. And I also want to say that the Community Connecting program is not the same program as community schools, which is why there was also an issue when Anderson pulled out of the community schools grants and consortium, that they were also, their services for Community Connect were terminated, and that was not okay, because that was something that the county board, Shasta County Board of Supervisors, had given money over to SCOE and approved money for SCOE that helped with that Community Connect program, which is with HHSA and other organizations, to connect members of our community who need services back to those services, and it helps with other services on campus. And those two things are not the same. Now, there is a braiding of funds that kind of makes those things intertwine down the road, and somehow that's how they try to tie in community schools, but they do not, and the services provided by those do not have one thing to do with the other. So that being clarified is important. There was a presentation to the West Foundation for their partnership and all of the money that they have raised for West Camp, including $1.8 million toward an administrative safety building. That was not able to be presented because of the federal shutdown. The person from Whiskeytown Environmental or the Whiskeytown National Parks representative was not able to be there. But they have September 14th, they had or September 24th, they had a planning day where they talked about where money and staffing, retention, and how all of that's going to be addressed. Oh, let me back up a little bit. October 25th from 4 to 10 at the Shasta District Fairgrounds is the fundraiser for West Camp. So if you're interested in attending that. But September 24th, they had a planning day where they talked about the initiatives that they want to do, the money that they have that they need to spend, and then staffing and retention, how we can get in a position to get teachers their classified staff and help them down the path to become teachers, to be certificated staff. And they talked about how they were granting themselves money and they would have a budget, and it would take about 3 years to get our staffing needs met and our attrition rate to where we have a less attrition and more retention. So I don't know that I fully agree with that part of the plan, but that is set to come back, and there should be a presentation, I think he said, in November on that. So that's about where we sit with SCOE. Again, do your own research. Look at these meetings. Look at the agendas ahead of time. Go through the consent agendas. See what is just being rubber stamped in local government and get involved. And if you or somebody you know is interested in running for one of these positions, let us know. I will get you plugged into the people that you need to know to help you with your campaign. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for listening. I appreciate you for taking the time. Get involved. This is your city, your county, your schools. Know what is going on and get involved. Be an informed voter and vote. It is so important that you vote. Thank you and have a great day.